One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Would your mother ever be around when your father was doing this kind of training?
Yeah.
Would she ever intervene?
No, my mom didn't intervene when my dad was doing things.
Over the years, were there occasions when your father was being physically violent with you?
Yes.
Did your mother ever intervene?
No.
Were there times when you were young when your father was ridiculing or berating you when your mother would say a word or two?
When I was young.
Would she do that?
Yes.
And would even that intervention, did that end before you were a teenager?
Objection, lady.
Sustained.
For how long would that type of intervention, how long did that type of intervention by your mother continue?
It continued when I was young, not all the time, usually at the dinner table when he didn't get on me very much, usually just Lyle, but I guess a lot of times I wanted to jump in, not when Dad was angry, but when Dad was in a good mood, to sort of be a part of the conversation. And Dad would jump on top of me when I tried to...
Physically or verbally?
Verbally. And my mom would say, Jose, and he would just look at her. And he would stop. That ended, I guess, before PDS, so it was before I was 11.
Have you seen the photographs up on the wall? There's a photograph of you there. I think someone testified you're about 18 months old hanging from a bar in a gym. It's on the top on the left.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You remember that photograph being taken?
No.
Do you remember something similar happening later involving hanging from a bar with your father?
Yes.
And-
It wasn't really hanging from a bar. He would put up a bar in the doorway, or he would put up a bar, not put up a bar, the bar on the soccer field, wherever there was a bar, he would want me to do pull-ups to get my arms stronger and so on. And just as I was getting tired, I would want to jump off because I was too tired, and when he'd grab my feet.
And what would that do?
Well, if I fell, he would grab my feet, and then he would lift them, and so if I fell, I'd fall on my face. And so I would be desperately holding on to the bar.
And why did he do that? What was the purpose?
I think partly he enjoyed it. He wanted to get me to cry out and beg for him to put me down, and partly to keep me stronger so that, I don't know how, but every time just as I was about to fall, he dropped me. Sometimes I fell on both my feet and my hands, but he was able to drop me. He was able to time it really well. It amazed me because I didn't think he'd be able to. I was really afraid that he'd hold my feet up too long and he thought I was just crying wolf or something and wasn't really serious. And I was afraid that he wasn't going to drop me in time, but he always did.
When you were young and you were afraid of things, were your parents ever approving of your fear?
Oh, no. No, they hated people that were afraid.
Okay, you're the right distance from the mic now, but now you have to speak up a little bit, okay? They hated people who were afraid?
Yes.
And did they seem afraid?
My mom was sometimes afraid of my dad, especially early on in life. But otherwise they were not. They certainly weren't afraid of other people or other things.
They never appeared afraid to you?
Objection, lady.
Sustained.
Did either of them ever appear afraid of other people or situations to you?
Definitely not, especially not my mother.
Excuse me?
Especially not my mother. She used to pride on, I guess partly for Dad, about being how strong she could be and brave, in situations.
Well, did you ever hear or see your father being anything but fearless or brave?
Definitely. Well, no, that was not something my dad would do.
I want to turn your attention now to your mother, starting with when you were living in Muncie. Did you feel when you were a little...
Objection, Vegas of time.
Yes. What time frame are you referring to?
Well, do you know what years you lived in Muncie, Mr. Menendez?
Yes.
What years?
Between 3 and 7.
Okay. So that would have, well, other witnesses have testified you moved to Muncie before you were 2 years old. Do you remember being 2 years old?
No, my earliest memory is 3.
Okay. Do you remember talking to Detective Zoller on September 17th, 1989, and telling him about what you were like when you were a little child?
Yes.
Remember that conversation?
I remember hearing it in court and reading it. I don't specifically remember the conversation.
Okay. And when you were thinking of yourself as a little child, talking to Detective Zoller, were you thinking of yourself as someone living in Muncie or living in Pennington or what?
Living in Muncie.
And how little a child were you thinking? Earliest memories?
Yes, when I was 3, 4, 5, 6.
And what was your memory of yourself at that very early age? What kind of child do you remember being?
I just remembered being a nature-oriented person. I really liked the environment. I really liked trees and animals and bushes and leaves and so on.
When you were real little, did you think of yourself as a happy child or an unhappy child?
I was happy when I was outside.
When you were little?
Yes.
Showing you this photograph, marked 271. Do you recognize the person in it?
Yes.
Is that you at 3?
Well, it's me.
You look at the back.
Yes, it's me at 3.
Your mother's handwriting is on the back?
Yes.
And is that the way you thought of yourself as a small child?
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, that's a happy child, isn't it?
Yes.
I want to call your attention for a moment, Mr. Menendez, to these photographs that are up on the board. Just check their exhibit number. You see these 3 photographs? Can you see them?
Yes. Yes.
And do you notice in 2 of these 3 photographs there's something on your face?
Yeah, it's just a bruise or cut.
Do you remember that particular bruise or cut?
No.
I want to call your attention to this last photograph. Before we were in court, had you seen this photograph before?
Yes.
Had you seen this photograph even printed in articles and shown in newspapers?
Yeah, that's where I saw it.
And is there something about this photograph that you noticed when you saw it printed?
Yes.
What was it that you noticed right away?
Where my dad's hand was.
And where is your dad's hand in this photograph?
On my brother's genital area.
And did you read the articles that were written, the articles that ran that photograph?
I think I read that article. I'm not sure.
One article that ran that photograph?
Yeah, I believe it was a magazine article, and I read that one.
Did the writer ever comment on where your father's hand was?
No.
Objection. This is irrelevant.
Objection sustained, the answer stricken.
When you lived in Muncie, were there occasions that you recall you were home by yourself?
Yes.
And approximately how old were you on those occasions?
Well, you're asking me when I was in Muncie?
Yes.
I was between the ages of 3 and 7.
Okay. Do you remember specific occasions when you were home alone?
Yes.
And how did you come to be home alone?
Everyone else in the house left.
And who would be the last person to leave? Who actually left you home?
My mom and my brother would leave. I remember specifically they'd leave to go play tennis sometimes.
And do you remember an occasion, strike that, how did you feel about being home by yourself?
I hated being alone. I just hated being alone at the house. I didn't like it during the day, but at night, I definitely did not like being home alone.
Why?
It just was really frightening to me. I just would hear a lot of noises, and I would get real scared and go under my bed.
And is there a particular occasion you remember when you were too scared to stay home alone?
Objection, leader.
Overruled.
Yes, there was a few times when I just couldn't handle it.
Was there one when you went looking for someone?
Yes.
And how old were you?
I think I was 5.
And who did you
When it
go
gets-
looking for?
My mom.
And was it daytime or nighttime?
It was at night.
And where had your mom gone? Did you know?
To the tennis club with Lyle.
And so what were you doing?
I was walking to the tennis club.
And how far away was the tennis club?
5 miles, 6 miles. It's
And
far.
what happened as you were walking to the tennis club?
On the way back, my mom found me.
Whose way back? Your way back or hers?
No, on her way back.
Was she walking or was she driving?
No, she was driving in the car. She saw me on the side of the road.
And she stopped and picked you up?
Yes.
Was there an occasion when you were living in Muncie when your brother Lyle got in the family car?
Yes.
And how old was Lyle at the time, if you can remember?
Again, he'd have to be between the ages of 6 and 10.
Okay, but you have an idea, was he closer to 6 or was he closer
I
to
think
10?
I think he was around 8.
How old were you?
I was young. I was like 5.
And what happened?
He got in the car and he was playing around with the driving wheel and I guess put the gear shift on neutral and the car started going backwards
Where was the car?
in the driveway.
And so it started to move?
Yeah, it started to roll backwards.
And what did you do?
I ran in the house to get Mom and say, Lyle's in the car's rolling down the hill, because it was a slanted driveway. And she said, okay, I'll be there in a minute.
What was she doing?
She was on the phone.
And was she there in a minute?
She made it just before the car ran over the mailbox. Took her a little while. I was surprised.
Well, did you ask her more than once? Did you go?
Yeah, no, I ran back out and ran back in and ran back out because the car was just gradually, it wasn't rolling down, it was just moving, it was picking up speed.
And what had you told your mother?
I told her that Lyle was in the car and the car was rolling down the driveway.
And were you alarmed?
Yeah, I was scared for Lyle. I wanted him to get out of the car, but he was trying to get the car back into gear because he didn't want to get in trouble.
And how did your mother appear when you told her this?
Like she was bothered. She was on the phone. I don't remember exactly.
Was there another episode later on when something happened to Lyle's foot?
Yes, this I remember.
Okay. Well, do you remember what you just told us?
Yes, but I remember Mom's reaction to this.
Okay. Well, what is this? Tell us about this incident with Lyle's foot.
Lyle was in Mom's bedroom. He was on this side of the bed, and he had stepped on a needle, and I just heard him cry out. And I was in the hallway or right next to my room, and I came in and I saw the needle sticking out of both sides of his big toe, and it really scared me. And
How was he behaving?
Oh, he was crying and screaming. And so I ran and got Mom, and she was on the phone, and this time I didn't care. I was just pulling on her arm, asking her to come, because Lyle was in pain, and Lyle had a needle in his foot, and she pushed me away, and she said, I'll be there in a minute.
And you told her that Lyle had a needle in his foot?
Yes.
And did she come right away?
No.
And did you have to go back again?
Yes, I was begging for her to come, because Lyle wasn't moving, he had his foot right in the air, and it was really hurting him.
Did the needle get removed from Lyle's foot?
I assume.
Who removed it?
I assume it was my mother.
And do you know how long it took before she tended to him?
Yeah, it took a while, and that's what really surprised me.
It surprised you?
It surprised me that she didn't come right away. I wanted her to get off the phone.
Well, Mr. Menendez, did you have an opportunity when you were quite young to observe the relationship between your brother and your mother?
Yes.
Was it somewhat different than your relationship with your mother?
Yes.
What was it like?
She disliked him. She hated him. There was a lot of tension, and she didn't care about him.
And how did you know that?
All right, is this being offered for the state of mind of the defendant witness here?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, it'll be received for that limited purpose.
Okay. Now, what was it that you saw or heard that led you to conclude that your mother hated your brother?
Just what she would say to him. She would say similar things to me, but just so often to Lyle. All the time, she would blame him for things that he didn't do to Dad because she didn't want to get in trouble. She would, well, she did that to me too, but she just the way she treated Lyle, I knew that she didn't like Lyle.
On an average day, Mr. Menendez, would your mother drive you and your brother to school?
Yes.
And on an average day, did she appear in the mornings to be angry with Lyle?
Yes.
What would happen, if you can recall, if, for example, she couldn't find her purse, or she couldn't find her keys, or she couldn't find something?
She'd blame Lyle.
And to the best of your knowledge, did he have anything to do with her purse or her keys or anything like that?
No, whenever she couldn't find anything or really was late or this, and Lyle was there, she'd always blame Lyle. She'd always say, it's your fault, you're making me busy, you make me too frustrated, I don't have time with you around.
And how did you feel about her blaming Lyle? Did you have an opinion as to whether or not he was responsible for these things?
No, I knew he wasn't responsible, but I figured that was just my mother.
And how did you feel about this?
I felt bad for Lyle.
Was he purposely upsetting her from what you could observe?
Again, it will be received only for the state of mind of the witness.
Thank you, Holmes.
Excuse me?
Was he purposefully upsetting her on these occasions?
No, not that I saw.
Now, what was different with you and your mother?
She, when I was younger, seemed to care a lot more about me than Lyle. In fact, she told me that I was a better kid than Lyle. She would compare me to Lyle. Like, I did a lot of things for her. I liked doing things for her. I would vacuum the floor, I would do the dishes, and she would say these things to me because I knew she would when I did that. And she just seemed to care more about me than Lyle.
Now, you said she said things like you were a better son than Lyle?
Yes.
What other complimentary things did your mother say to you over the course of your life, Mr. Menendez?
Just basically comparing me to Lyle.
So she favorably compared you to Lyle?
Yes.
Now, you've already testified that she would call you stupid and dummy and that kind of thing. Can you remember, and you've been asked this before, you've been asked to try to remember, haven't you? Positive things that your mother would say to you.
Yes.
And you've been asked to remember positive things that your mother would do with you, too.
Yes.
Have you been able to come up with any more than what you just told us?
Overall.
No.
What was the best thing about your mother from your standpoint as a child?
The way she smiled.
She had a nice smile?
Yeah.
And what would she smile about?
She would smile when I cleaned the house or did something nice for her. She would smile.
Would she smile if you won tournaments or won
Yes.
prizes or won trophies?
Yes.
Would she smile at you for any other reason that you've been able to remember?
No.
And did you do things to try to get her to smile?
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, do you recognize that?
Yes.
Did you make that?
Yes.
Did you make it in school or at home, or do you know?
I don't remember.
You have to speak from your...
I don't remember.
And do you recognize the writing inside?
Yes.
And is it your writing?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Now, on the back page of the written part inside,
Yes.
is there a list of things there?
Yes.
And is the list of things there the things that you would do when you were little to get your mother to smile?
Yes.
Now, do you recall an occasion when you did things around the house in an effort to get your mother to smile that didn't work out quite right?
Yes.
And how old were you on this particular occasion?
I was playing tennis. I believe I was under 13.
Okay, you were over 11 and under 13?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do on that occasion?
I was baking a cake for her.
Okay, and what happened?
And I did something wrong in making the cake. I either turned up the temperature too much or put in the wrong ingredient or something, and the cake sort of went all over the oven. It spilled out and did a lot of things.
Okay, and what happened?
And I noticed this right before she got home with Lyle, and she came in the house, and I was trying to clean up the mess that I had made in the oven, and she saw it, and she got extremely upset.
Okay, and after she got extremely upset, what, if anything, did she do?
She saw what I did, and she started screaming, and she grabbed part of the cake and started throwing it at me, and I ran up to my room, and she chased me up there.
Was your mother ever physical with you? Did she ever hit you or slap you or hurt you?
Yes.
And what were some of the things she would hit you for?
I guess when I made her very angry.
Okay.
These type of things that I screwed up on. If I didn't vacuum the floor right, she wouldn't come over and hit me in the face. She would just pound on my chest or slap me if I wasn't doing my homework right, or not my homework, my testing. That's when she would get really angry for that as well. Just different things like that.
Mr. Menendez, did you bite your nails?
Yes.
Did you bite your nails when you were a child?
Yes.
And do you have recollections of riding in a car with your mother and biting your nails?
Yes.
And what would your mother do when you bit your nails?
She would, I would be biting my nails either next to her in the seat or in the back seat, and she'd hit her hand against my face where my hand was. She'd hit my hand in my face.
She'd smack you?
Yes.
And what would you do after she smacked you?
I would put my hand down, and I had the urge to bite my fingernails, and I couldn't stop, and so I would sort of gradually put my hand back up to my face, and she'd hit me again.
Okay, so smacking you didn't stop you from biting your nails?
No.
But would she continue to smack you even if you kept putting your hand back?
Eventually, if I kept putting my hand back up, she'd get too frustrated and keep hitting me, and I'd turn my back, and she'd start pounding on my back.
Now, did your father do a similar thing with respect to your nail biting?
Yes.
Did your father bite his nails?
Yes.
Anybody smack him in the face for doing it?
No, he just didn't want me to bite my fingernails.
See?
Did your mother ever scare you with the potential of burning down the house?
Yes.
And how would that come about?
Just when I would be upstairs in my room, and there would be smoke coming up the stairs.
And how often did that happen?
That extreme only happened a couple of times when I guess she left the food in the oven, and it was burning, and it was coming out of the oven, and the smoke would fill the house and go up the stairs. And she purposely disconnected the smoking alarm for that.
Okay, what would happen when the house filled with smoke?
She taught me how to get down on my knees and put I guess it was a hand cloth. She had something in the kitchen over my face that was wet. And she would have me practice being down on my knees, crawling under the smoke. She'd have Lyle do the same thing. And then crawl outside with the sliding glass door.
Now, you say that this type of incident where the house filled with smoke only happened a couple of times, but did she burn the food more often than a couple of times?
She burnt the food almost every day. She was absent-minded a lot, and she just did things like that.
Now, was it your mother's responsibility to get you to and from your various commitments with sports training?
Yes.
And would she drop you off on time?
No.
Would she pick you up on time?
No.
What experiences did you have of not being picked up on time?
I guess sometimes she was with Lyle, and sometimes Lyle and I would just wait, and I would just wait for a couple hours after I finished playing tennis or swimming.
And would this be during the daytime or at nighttime?
At night.
And how would you feel when you're waiting hours for your mother to pick you up?
Sustain.
Would you sometimes wait? You said you'd wait for a couple of hours?
Overall.
Yeah, one time, I remember being at Petty waiting for over 2 hours.
I remember being at where?
Petty, it was a swim club. Not a club, but a swim school.
And you waited over 2 hours?
Yes.
Was that the only time you had a long wait for your mother?
No.
How often would this happen?
I usually had to wait anywhere between a half hour and an hour, but sometimes it was long, but not that often.
And would the other children be there waiting also?
Sustain.
This bears on his state of mind,
All
really.
right, let's get on with it.
Would you be alone
Yes.
in the dark?
Yes, at night.
And how did you feel about your mother as being left alone this way?
I just felt like she had other things to do.
Did you think she cared about you?
I thought she cared about me. I just felt that I wasn't. She just had other things to do.
When you were living in Pennington, Mr. Menendez, were you ever forced to eat garbage?
Yes,
And who forced you to do that?
my father.
Referring to.
Okay. You heard your brother testify that there was a rule in the house that if you didn't finish your meal, you had to eat it the next meal?
Yes.
And were you subjected to that rule more than he was?
Yes,
Who was the pickier eater, you or your brother?
I was.
And were there occasions when you would sit at the table for quite a long time?
Yes.
And were there any occasions when you tried to throw the food away?
Yes.
And on any of those occasions, did you throw the food away?
Yes.
And what happened after you threw the food away?
My father, I remember one time my father went to the bathroom and I couldn't finish the string beans or the meat, and I threw it in the garbage, and when he came back, he saw my plate was empty, so he went to the garbage and he found it in there.
And were you forced to eat it?
Yes.
And was your mother present?
Yes.